活动将于1分钟后开始。现在有请我们的 panel 来宾上台。我们有 Sean Mosport, CEO of BigMark, and Christina Jian, Community Manager at .com. Benjamin So, CEO of Gerbelator Exchange. Ho Chang Wu, Managing Partner at KK Farm. And our host is Miranda Tan, CEO of Robin8. And the topic will be panel, blockchain in business.
Okay, it's working. Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Miranda Tan, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Robin8, and we're a new wave of social media on blockchain. And today, we have a pretty exciting panel here today. And the way I like to do is I was thinking, we could kind of have some fun and just, talk about some of the issues that's pressing in terms of blockchain and business. So why don't we start by having everyone just quickly introduce themselves. Maybe a couple lines, who you are, which company you're from, and why don't we start from here, Sean?
Okay. My name is Sean Mospoltz. I started a company here in Taiwan called BitMark, and we're building a blockchain property system.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Jian. So I'm working for Datum. So it's a data exchange platform. We're headquartered in Switzerland, and then we have offices in Hong Kong, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Hello. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Benjamin So. I'm the Executive Director of the Gibraltar Stock Exchange, and we have a subsidiary called the Gibraltar Blockchain Exchange. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Po Chang. I'm from KK Farm. We are in a music investment company, and we're building a creative industry protocol based on blockchain.
Okay, great. So I guess today's topic is basically blockchain and businesses. So I want to ask our panelists today what are some of the best applications or on blockchain that you see in businesses? So maybe we could kind of share some of your insights, since I think all of us come from different places. And so why don't we start with Sean?
Sure. So my favorite application is KK Farm. Can I start there? No. So a lot of industries have very complicated supply chains. So they deal with people that don't trust each other. And anytime you have something that you're creating of value that has to touch on a number of different parties that don't trust each other, the blockchain is a pretty good use case for that. So I think that any of the creative sectors, especially music, are quite good. And then also things where you have to deal with regulation. So people's personal data if you're in Europe, people's health data if you're in other places. These are also extremely good areas for blockchain.
Okay, since we talked about that, do you want to add to that, Po-chan, in terms of how, some of the best applications?
我这段其实没有办法用英文讲，因为我不是很习惯用英文讲，我用中文讲。
可以啊，就讲中文嘛。
我觉得，
反正你觉得中文好就讲中文，讲英文就讲英文。
I think we started from cryptocurrency, so 不过基本上，我认为 blockchain 到目前为止最适合的还是关于资产。那这个资产可以有很多的类型跟很多的面貌。那比如说，我们 KK Farm 跟 BigMart 合作，那也就是因为看中 BigMart 它在 digital property 这一块 blockchain 上面的一个利用跟一个 application。那它可以结合这个资产跟所有权。那我觉得以目前来看，其实 blockchain 最独特的，或者是现在其他的技术，我们旧的技术还没有办法达到的。就是如何让一个资产可以变成数位化，但它又能够真的有 ownership， 而且可以快速而方便的转移。这个是我觉得目前 blockchain 最厉害的 application.
That's great. So Christina, do you want to actually share some of the things, applications you see?
Yeah, so actually to add to what Bhutan was saying, basically the blockchain, right? So because of the technology, the nature of the technology itself, it's really, really a good tool for data storage and to protect users' privacy. And we are seeing a lot of applications in those two areas. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to share some of your thoughts, and then I'll also, chime in.
Yeah, so I agree with all of the panelists here, and basically I believe that the blockchain is useful, especially when we're dealing with globalization, right? Because right now everyone's from different countries, but in the blockchain world, we are all in one country or all in one blockchain. So that's really useful for financial services, especially in my case. So financial services whereby we can actually make cross-border transactions, make investments, all done on the blockchain, which also creates a trusted ledger whereby any country, because even though they are from different worlds or different countries, they can all agree to a consensus based on the blockchain.
I totally agree. Like, just so you guys know, like, I'm from New York, and also, like, our company's based in Shanghai. So in China, one of the biggest issues that we see in terms of is fake data. And I think in New York Times recently, there was an article maybe a month ago that talked about the whole, fake data situation for influencers. Like in China, one of the things we see is like fake data. There's like, 在中国, we call it 水军, where there's all this fake data. And also in the US, we also see the situation of like, fake news. So I think one of the things I see in terms of business acquisition, to go back to where, Christine, what you were saying, is I see that basically there's a situation of who owns this data ownership, like copyright, IP protection. And then where actually blockchain can provide that transparency, 透明, transparency or trust. And I see it like since I'm in the media and advertising, I see that in advertising. But I think like, we see it today, like in music. Do you, like Sean, do you see in some of the other applications for that, aside from music, that also uses your technology?
Sure. So the way that we think about this is there's been hundreds of years of law that has been built up based on simple contracts, private contracts that deal with who owns what. And when the internet came around, the people that built the internet sort of had this idea that they don't need governments, they don't need law, they don't need money. And so the original architecture of the internet didn't take into account any of this stuff. And there were technical reasons why, but there were really more philosophical reasons why not. And so these crypto networks are sort of like the second internet that allows us to do economics, to handle sort of business transactions where you need to exchange value over this public, anybody can access global network. And so I think that's what's really interesting about it. And then you can do things that bridge the previous world that had to do with law and rule of law. And now you can bridge these into code and connect these together. And it's still extremely early. You've probably heard of these things called smart contracts. It's still very, very early for this stuff. But the promise, from my perspective, is that you can bring the rule of law into areas of the internet that, because there wasn't rule of law, musicians suffered. Anybody that makes something that needs to be distributed digitally, the transition to digital was not so good.
That's great. Hey, Christina, I think I would love to kind of hear more about, in terms of like, Datum, how you guys actually use blockchain in terms of helping individuals with their data. Maybe you could share with the audience a little bit about what you guys do, and then we could talk about some of the other applications.
Thank you. So basically, Datum, so what we do is that we allow you to upload your data and store it safely on the blockchain, and also monetize on your data, because we want to educate people. I mean, as Sean was saying, okay, the first generation of the internet, we thought, oh, okay, the internet, yeah, the free transaction of data, but there's really no protection of data. And as Miranda was saying, yeah, so basically, what Datum is doing, that we are providing this solution, this alternative for you to store your data, and then, yeah, you can decide on your privacy level, and you know, according to your privacy level, you can earn tokens, and these tokens are exchangeable on 7 different exchanges, hopefully on Gibraltar as well in the future. Yeah, and so basically you can monetize your data. And one very important aspect of it is also, as we're saying, actually in this aspect we're kind of similar, right? The two companies, we really want to pound in people's head, okay, you need to take back your data.
So I guess for you guys, I love this whole concept. You know, since we're very similar in terms of like empowering people with their data. So when you say like, you know, like on your platform, people can actually upload content or data. What do you mean? Like, what kind of data? Is this like pictures, videos? Maybe you could like.
Yeah. So currently, and I'll be super honest with this audience here. Currently, because of some kind of limitations of the blockchain itself, we're really focusing on structured data. So anything that is text-based. So it could be, you know, words, figures, like numbers.
Text-based?
Yeah, text-based data.
Like something like, for example, like an article you wrote?
Yes.
What about videos or pictures?
Not videos, but probably the metadata of videos, yes. But not the videos themselves, yeah.
No, I think it's super exciting because all of us have data. Yeah. So anyone can actually use this platform, sign up. Is there other companies like yours?
Well, how do I put this? Because it's very interesting, right? Because we're establishing this platform. Our final ideal, our ideal is to establish the eBay of data trading. So basically, your data becomes the product, and the platform that we're providing is completely transparent, and you know, buyers and sellers can just come to this platform, and then they can trade their data. So this is the ideal. And Miranda, you were just saying everyone has this data. Just to inspire me or reminded me, you know, there's Tim O'Reilly. He actually said that data is the new oil. The new oil of the 21st century. So this is actually something that we truly believe in, and we really want to, you know, awaken people's consciousness about this. Yeah, that your data has value, and we should really cherish and actually utilize the power of it. This could be, you know, there are so many applications that could be good not only for businesses, but also humanitarian purposes. Actually, one of our blog posts actually mentioned about, you know, basic, what is it? Basic income.
Basic income.
Yeah. So basically everybody, because you're creating data every day, so eventually, you know, the ideal, we are thinking maybe in the fact, I don't know, in the
totally
future,
agree. So you're saying data becomes like an asset, kind of like a car.
Yeah. And you can create it every day, and you can monetize on it. So yeah, it becomes like some kind of a basic income for everybody without need of having, I wouldn't say governments, but yeah, basically everybody can become self-reliant, self-sufficient.
So Benjamin, like, you know, I'd love to learn more about like your exchange in terms of like some of the applications you're using. Maybe you could share the audience a little bit more about, you know, what you guys do and the applications.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
So anyway, I'm pretty confident that I'm the first stock exchange guy that ever appears at such events, right? Because the stock exchange belongs to a very old model. The way that we trade equities or, you know, 炒股票, or the way that we've been doing it is been the same for the last 200 years, I guess. Okay, and it just doesn't make any sense, right? Because if I can make a wire transfer from Singapore to Taiwan and it happens within a day, why do I need to wait 2 days for the stock transaction to be cleared, you know, for money to be returned to my account? It just doesn't make any sense. Right? So what we really want to do is to be able to remove the friction, because there's just too much friction right now in the traditional financial space. Okay, we're not just talking about stock trading. We're talking about real estate transactions. Okay, we're talking about rental agreements. We're talking about, you know, collective investment schemes. There's just too much friction, too many middlemen, and there's just too many layers of bureaucracy and, you know, what have you not. Okay, whereby it's just increasing costs, money, and it's not inclusive, because most people, because of that, they are unable to participate. Okay, but with the blockchain, I believe that in time we'll be able to have fractional ownership, fractional ownership of assets, of equities, of securities, or basically a bundle of financial instruments. And that's where I think the blockchain can revolutionize the way that we live. Okay, so just it's really hard to imagine, but actually it's happening really, really soon. That's what I believe in.
That's really interesting. So I guess this goes to my next question. So is a decentralized platform really better than a centralized platform? I'd love to kind of get everyone's experience on that.
Sure. So decentralized is always slower. It's slower by design. And so what happens in a lot of these industries is that, again, nobody trusts one another. And so if somebody says, okay, I will be the one that runs the database, then people will be like, the hell you are. Like, I'm not going to trust you. And so they form some other entity that they trust, maybe a central bank, something like that. And that introduces vulnerabilities in the whole system. Most fraud is insider jobs, right? It's not theft, right? It's insiders taking stuff. And so, so the question of should you decentralize really is the question of what does your ecosystem look like? So with music, maybe Bolton can speak a bit more, but in that particular case, again, nobody trusts each other. If, for example, KKBox said, hey, we're going to have a database and everybody has to use their database, nobody want to use it. So the key benefit is that it's not owned by one person, it's owned by everyone. I think that's really the key benefit. But it's very slow. It's probably the world's slowest database that anybody knows how to make.
That's really interesting. So maybe you could share with us, your thoughts since you're in the music space. So is it decentralized really better, or what's your take on that?
We're talking about fake data, right? So we're also facing the piracy issue for a long time of copyright. So some people ask me that if I upload a song and I record a song of Michael Jackson and I record it on a blockchain, does it mean that I own the copyright because I put it on the blockchain first? Of course not. Yeah. Why? Why it's not? Because right now, blockchain can be a proof or a certificate for you to prove that you register your copyright first, right? So, 谁给我们这个 copyright 的 right actually is the law, the copyright law of the government. So sometimes we cannot fully decentralize. Like
I
copyright.
Totally agree, yeah.
Copyright is a right from the centralized authority. But in application-wise, we can use blockchain to protect or to enforce the execution of our contract, of the license that we make. So, like, if we have 1,000 people that we share a copyright, how can we make sure that everybody can take their revenue? Right now, it's not very easy to do that. 因为你要分享给那么多的人，音乐的收入那么的难计算。现在即便是你有10个 owner、20个 owner， 它都会造成很大的成本的负担。But if we do it on blockchain, that will be super easier.
So for you guys do a combination, it sounds like. A combination of decentralized and centralized?
Yeah, and decentralized part, because decentralized technology, not only blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. There is also distributed database or distributed storage. We also leverage this kind of technology to build the open data library for all the partners in the industry that we share the same metadata, like the music metadata or the film or the photography metadata. Everybody can access an open data library. It's not owned by everyone. Mm-hmm. It's owned by, it's not owned by an individual one, but owned by everyone. Yeah.
Well, that sounds great. And I guess Benjamin, in terms of your industry, right, I see some exchange. I actually spoke to some people here today who came from the exchange, and they're telling me, I met someone from Carbonhood, also met someone from another exchange who's more decentralized, and we were talking about this last night. So, you're the expert here. What is your take in terms of, is it decentralized Is it much better? Is it something, necessarily better, or is it, a combination?
I think that there isn't necessarily a comparison between what's better or not. I just think that both will be coexisting in the space. Okay, so definitely there will be decentralized exchanges and there are actors and there are participants. And definitely there are centralized exchanges because most people still belong to the traditional mindset whereby they still trust a central authority. And in our case, certain functions can't be decentralized because we are regulated. So there's some things that we really cannot release to the public to enforce, right? So we're definitely going to maintain some form of centralization. But in terms of trading, in terms of consensus, in terms of transparency, we want to follow the decentralized ethics and ethos. Yeah, so it's going to be just both will be existing at the same time because some people will prefer to trade on the decentralized exchange. Some people will rather have the fast executions on the centralized exchange, okay, and put the funds into a party that they can trust. So I think that both will actually work.
Okay. Christine, you want to add to that, or we could, yeah.
Well, basically, I think there's a good and bad for everything, as Benjamin was saying. I mean, the decentralized, yeah, basically. That's that.
Okay. So
no, because we all know there are limitations about the blockchain right now, and we all know that everybody's working hard, and that's why there are improvements all the time. So
yeah,
it's a matter of time.
I totally agree, and we're still very early in this stage. So I guess to our next question, since is GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations, which is regulated by the EU. I would love to kind of get your take on this, since we're talking about data, and we mentioned earlier that data is like the new oil, this digital asset. So what is your take on that? Maybe we'll start this time from on this side.
I'll pass this one.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 不是很熟.
Yeah, so GDPR is the data regulations in the EU, and because Gibraltar is part of the EU, we are being forced to adopt it. And I can say that it is a very stringent regulations. Basically, if you look at any EU websites, if you go on the website, you'll see there's a cookie policy forcing you to agree to the cookies. That's part of GDPR. And then basically, we can't share the data with anyone else. So I think that this is actually quite, this is actually a good regulation in the sense that it protects personal data. Okay, it protects personal data. And I'm also of the belief that in terms of data on the blockchain, because for example, I have some very good projects in my exchange, they are doing KYC on the blockchain. So without sharing the personal data, they can actually, using zero transfer knowledge, using shared databases in the distributed ledger, okay, whereby this person, for example, this person A, he has been KYC done, in an exchange, for example, exchange A, okay? So these data will be uploaded to the blockchain, and then exchange B, exchange C, or bank D, or company F, okay? They can just accept this zero knowledge proof that A has been whitelisted and KYC has been done. So I actually think that this idea of data privacy can actually kick off some form of zero transfer blockchain that's actually useful in the business scale.
No, I totally agree. I think this is something that's very big in EU, like privacy data. I think in Asia, we're in China, and this whole concept is actually, I do know, I spoke to some people in the, who's in regulations. They are looking into doing GDPR, but still a very new concept in Asia. And I think maybe this is why, Po-chan was like, he's not that familiar, because in Asia, we don't really talk about this, general data protection regulation, that EU is really big into privacy. That's why, in EU, they find Facebook, they find Google. But I think Asia is slowly also looking into, I heard that in China, they're gonna start looking into GDPR maybe around May. So Christina, maybe you wanna add to that, since you deal with the whole personal data issue.
Well, what I would say is that for certain businesses, obviously that's gonna pose a challenge, but for Datum, it's gonna be pretty good. Because I'm just super honest here, right? Because this is what we do. This is our vision. We want to protect people's data privacy by, being able to provide an alternative for you to store your data in a safe and secure manner on the blockchain, encrypted, decentralized. So yeah, this should be good.
I totally agree. Since we're similar, we're all, for us, right? We're about also empowering people with their data. So one of the things we're looking to do is actually be GDPR, compliant. It's all about, giving that data back. So I'd love to kind of hear from you, Sean, in terms of your take.
Sure. So I have a bit of a pessimistic take on GDPR after learning about it. I think it's actually a humongous problem for anybody doing blockchain stuff because there's a part of GDPR that is sort of known as the right to be forgotten. So you can remove yourself from the internet. And that's absolutely incompatible with a decentralized system like a blockchain. I mean, you can't even do it technically, right? And so I think that there's good parts of GDPR. It was set up underneath kind of the human rights part of The Hague, so it's trying to think about people. But I think actually the real point of GDPR is to punish the US tech companies because Europe doesn't have any big tech companies. So they're essentially just using legislation to break apart the Googles, the Facebooks, and to punish them. And so I think that like there's real serious issues with how you actually comply with GDPR. And people say blockchain will help, and I think actually blockchain will hurt it significantly. Because the whole point of blockchain is that you write something once, and it's going to be there forever. And the whole point of GDPR is that the individual has control over themselves into the future. And that's totally incompatible with blockchain.
I love that. That's actually the first time I heard someone that's actually against GDPR. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I'm both for and against it. I think it's very interesting what it's trying. So I'm both for and against it. It's very interesting what it's trying to do, but I think it's extremely misguided in how it understands data. Yeah, once you propagate data over the internet, you can't get it back. I mean, nobody knows that better than the musician, right? Piracy is not solvable by, by saying, hey, you have to delete that from your computer. It just doesn't work that way.
I think that's actually really interesting. I'm like, I totally agree to what you're saying in the sense that it's a hard concept to basically adapt. I don't know, but at the same time, I also I think for us, we're kind of in a similar type business about protecting people. I think one of our things is like, I see the pros and cons of that, but that's I have to say one of the first people I actually, and I agree with what you're saying too. I think it's actually quite interesting.
It's not an obvious, this is the way to do it.
Well, I totally agree. I think the space is pretty early. So I think we don't have that much time, but I think, some of the other things we want to talk about, we have maybe time for a couple more questions, is like, so what are the challenges that you see with blockchain? I think this kind of, like he just mentioned, some of the challenges of GDPR, actually implementing it, but what's some of the other challenges you see, like for blockchain going forward? Like we know, in China, there's a lot of regulations. It's very volatile, as those of you guys who follow. So I'd love to kind of hear from you guys. What are some of the challenges that you see, and also what's some of your predictions? I know it's really hard, especially for this whole blockchain. It's so volatile. But I'd love to kind of hear what do you kind of take for the next 6 to 12 months, and also kind of hear what you guys your take on that. So we could start, I guess, from maybe Benjamin, and then or maybe Po-chan. Either one's fine.
I think the scalability and privacy and the volatile issue, the cryptocurrency wise. But for me, I think for application, the UX for blockchain application is the biggest problem we have to solve.
I'm sorry, what is the biggest?
The user experience.
The UX.
Yeah, the UX. Because if we want a mass adoption of the technology, I think my mother should have a way to use it. But right now, it's very hard to even explain the concept to them. Or to my, 我的小侄子, they're only 小学生, it's very hard. But they take iPad, they can use it. They can play the game. They can even use YouTube. 非常自然的. But how to use blockchain application like that is a very big challenge for us.
I agree. I think application, talking about it, it might be kind of tough for them. But at the same time, when I go to a lot of these conferences, like Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, one of the things I do see is like the blockchain industry has people young, old, from every age, every race. It's definitely, but I agree, the application is definitely very hard. Okay, that's a good thing. And what are some of your predictions? Like, do you see anything positive coming up, or?
Sure. I think the scalability issue is we're going to solve it in just a few years. Yeah, all the technology-wise.
Say that one more time. What's your take?
The scalability
Scalability
issue.
we solve.
And all the technical issue, we'll solve it. But
that would be wonderful.
Yeah. But the consensus right now we're talking about consensus of all the protocol or the algorithm. But the consensus between human beings, I think, is another problem we have to face. Like we're building an industry protocol based on blockchain, but how to persuade everyone, every participant, every player in the industry to use the same protocol, to use the same standard, that's a challenge. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great, interesting thoughts. Okay, Benjamin, what about you? What are some of the challenges you see, and in terms of, from your experience, what's some of your predictions that, you think we'll see in the next 6 to 12 months?
Right. So I actually agree totally with Po Chang's, whereby I think that adoption is the key, whereby even though so many people talk about crypto, so many people know about crypto, it seems, actually most of them don't know how it works, right? So I think adoption is key, and basically because it's not easy to understand how it works. Okay, so I think that in terms of projections or predictions, I believe that infrastructural development will be needed. And I guess in the next 6 to 12 months, more and more institutions, okay, will be spending more resources to build the infrastructure technology that's going to help adoption for the masses.
Yeah. Okay, and I guess I'd love to kind of hear from Christine, right? Your take on that, some of the challenges, and also maybe you could share with us kind of maybe like some of the things you see that's going on in Taiwan, how government are getting involved. Like I'd love to kind of get your take on that, if you could share that.
Okay. So basically the challenges, well, scalability, as everybody has said, and then education as well, because I'm actually the community manager, right? So I got a lot of questions, and we are currently, it's like blockchain is supposedly for everybody, but really the applications that we see so far are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but so far the applications that we are seeing now is still very much first world focused. But this shouldn't be the case. And but then, of course, this is going to be solved. And to the second question about Taiwan, well, we have a great legislator here that's been.
I totally agree.
Yeah, Jason. He's been pushing and yeah, really promoting for the technology to be adopted by the Taiwanese government. And yeah, and hopefully there's going to be. One thought that came to me when Po-san was talking about, whether people can use only one single blockchain. I actually think it's a great thing that people use different blockchains. Because different blockchains, I mean, each has a different characteristic. And then interoperational collaboration, this would be great. But yeah.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, I totally agree. I think one of the things I see before we pass this to Sean, and I think then we have to kind of wrap it up, is that I see that basically like some of the challenges, it's so tough because like in some countries like China, US, like in the US we have like SEC. So people are debating, is this security, is it utility? In China there's a whole crackdown. So all of a sudden people are just kind of like getting really, the technology is great. But I see because of what the government's trying to do now, it's just tougher to for a lot of companies to really get into it because of the whole China crackdown. But in Taiwan, I come here and I see wow, the government's so proactive and they're I think it's really great. I think it's an opportunity for Taiwan actually, because now that China has this crackdown, Korea's they have all the volatility. I see that this is a huge opportunity for Taiwan to really come into take advantage of this and really become maybe a hub like Singapore.
Yeah, I'm just going to follow on with that one because I'm trying to build a company in Taiwan. And so I'm an American, so anything I do, I have to have the fear of the SEC, right? And the SEC has made it virtually impossible to issue a token in the US. You don't do it. Like our lawyers said, don't even try to do anything in the US for the next year. And there's all of these different regulatory bodies that could regulate a token, right? So it could be somebody like the IRS, like the tax authority. It could be the central bank. It could be FSC. You have all these different controllers that could do this. And what's needed is Congress, right, to pass a law that says clearly what you can do with this, because a token can be a security, it can be money, it can be an asset, it can be all kinds of things. And unless somebody at the very top says, hey, here's how we're going to deal with this, then everybody's going to suffer, everybody's going to struggle, right? And Japan said, here's what it is, and look at what's happened. So much innovation over there, right? And I think Taiwan has a great opportunity. I hope the crypto congressman is still here hearing about this. Okay. A great opportunity, fantastic people, if they just put the regulatory framework in place, it can flourish.
I totally agree. I think in the U.S., right, it's a huge mess. And I talked to a lot of my friends who want to do ICOs, and it's like they really can't get out of their underwear. They're like, is it a utilities token? Is it a securities token? And we did our ICO actually on January 8th, and we totally stayed clear of the U.S. Just because, you know, as an American, it's like, there's just so many laws and regulation. And then in China, I think the same thing. It's like a lot, because of the crackdown last September, all of a sudden now, if you go to China, right, if you go to any conferences, everyone's, you know, laying low. Nobody wants to speak actually. And, you know, and if you do have a conference on, you know, on blockchain, they don't talk about tokens. All they talk about is the technology. Even talking about the technology, people are kind of like fearful. So I think this is a huge opportunity from Taiwan. And I'm like really excited now that I'm here actually meeting a lot of people. I see that I think the next 6 months, this is a time for Taiwan to really take off. Like innovation, innovation, innovation. And I'm pretty excited. So do you guys want to add anything before I think we have to wrap it up? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. So yeah, look forward to meeting all of you guys.
Yeah, very impressed, Kano. And it's so awesome that we have the concept of centralized and decentralized hybrid system concept. Thank you. And it seems that for business, that blockchain have so many opportunities, but also have so many challenges. And I guess the challenges can be your homework, that you can think about that after you go home. The next keynotes will also bring from our Miranda Tan, and she's going to